My name is Patricia, and I still remember the exact second I realized my wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a message. The venue was beautiful, soft lights strung like fireflies, white tablecloths, champagne flutes catching the glow. People were laughing. The band was tuning up. My mother dabbed at her eyes, the way moms do when they're trying not to ruin their mascara, and then I saw where my parents were sitting, a back table, near the kitchen, not toward the back, not off to the side, no, by the swinging doors, where servers rushed past with trays and the smell of fried appetizers floated out like an insult. I stood there for a moment, blinking like my eyes could fix it. I walked straight to my mother-in-law, Diane, who was gliding around the room like she owned it, like she hadn't just shoved my parents into the shadows. Diane, I said, keeping my voice gentle, why are my parents back there? She didn't even lower her smile. She leaned in close enough that anyone watching would think she was saying something sweet, and then she said it loudly enough for 3 nearby guests to hear. We didn't want them embarrassing the important guests. The words hit me so hard I actually felt them in my chest. My father's shoulders stiffened across the room like he'd been slapped. My mother's face went pale, and she forced a smile like she was trying to survive the moment without breaking. I turned to my fiancé, Andrew. He was standing right beside me. He heard it. I waited for him to react, to say something, to step in. He just shrugged, like my parents being treated like trash was a seating preference. Like it was easier to let it happen than to fix it. That's when something inside me went quiet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded and let them think they'd won, because in that moment, I made a decision I didn't even know I was capable of. I smoothed my dress, walked across the dance floor with a calm I didn't feel, and headed straight for the DJ booth. The DJ looked up, confused, when I reached for the microphone, and as I wrapped my fingers around it, I saw Diane turn, still smiling, completely unaware of what I was about to do. I brought the mic to my lips, and then I said the one sentence that made the entire room go silent, and changed everything. I didn't clear my throat, I didn't warn anyone, I just tapped the microphone once. The feedback screeched through the speakers, sharp enough to slice through the chatter. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze in the air. You could hear a pin drop. Andrew turned toward me, confused. Diane's smile faltered. Hi everyone, I said, my voice calm. Too calm. Before we continue with dinner, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight, especially the important guests. There was polite laughter. I let it hang for half a second, because apparently, I continued. Some people here were concerned that my parents might embarrass you. The air shifted. It wasn't laughter anymore. It was tension. I turned slightly and pointed, not dramatically. Just enough. You see that table near the kitchen doors? The one next to the trash bins and the waitstaff station. That's where my parents were seated. A murmur rolled through the room like distant thunder. My father worked 32 years at the same factory, I said. My mother cleaned houses so I could go to college. They've never embarrassed me a day in my life. I could see Diane's face draining of color. Andrew stepped toward me, whispering harshly, Patricia, stop. I didn't look at him. Tonight, I continued. They were told they might embarrass the important guests. The silence was suffocating now. A few heads turned slowly toward Diane. Someone actually gasped. I wasn't yelling. That was the part that made it worse. I just want to clarify something, I said. If my parents embarrass anyone, it will only be because they raised a daughter who refuses to stay quiet when they're disrespected. That's when Andrew reached for my arm, and that's when I pulled it away. I love my parents, I said into the microphone. And if they're not welcome at the front of this room, I paused. I let the words build. Then neither am I. The room exploded into whispers. Diane stood up abruptly, her chair scraping across the floor. Andrew hissed, you're making a scene. I looked at him for the first time since this started. No, I said softly. You did, and then I did something no one, especially them, saw coming. I took off my engagement ring and placed it on the DJ's table, right next to the microphone. The entire ballroom stopped breathing, and that's when Diane realized this wasn't a speech. It was a cancellation. You would think a ballroom full of wealthy guests would erupt into chaos. It did, and single quotes It went deadly quiet, the kind of silence that feels expensive. Andrew stared at the ring on the DJ table like it was a bomb about to detonate. Patricia, he whispered, panic creeping into his voice. Don't do this, don't do this. As if I had done something wrong. As if humiliating my parents in front of 200 people wasn't already done. I turned back to the microphone. I just realized something, I said calmly. If this is how your family treats mine on our wedding day, what does the rest of my life look like? A woman near the front shifted uncomfortably. One of Andrew's business partners avoided eye contact. Diane stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "This is highly inappropriate," she snapped, dropping the fake sweetness. "We worked very hard on this event." "Yes," I replied evenly. "You did." I scanned the room, crystal chandeliers, imported flowers, a 10-tier cake, and my parents sitting by the kitchen doors. "My parents worked hard too," I said. "They just didn't get a chandelier." A few people actually clapped, softly, but it was enough. Diane's face tightened. Andrew grabbed my wrist again, this time harder. "You're ruining everything." I gently removed his hand. "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing everything." I stepped down from the DJ platform and walked toward my parents. The entire room watched me cross that dance floor. My mother looked terrified. My father looked ashamed. That broke something in me. I leaned down and said quietly, "You don't sit in the back." "Not in my life." My dad swallowed hard. "Patty, honey, we don't want trouble. It's too late for that," I said softly. I took my mother's hand. Then I turned back toward the room. "I apologize for the inconvenience," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But this wedding is officially cancelled." A collective gasp. Someone dropped a fork. Andrew looked like the ground had disappeared under him. Diane stepped forward, shaking. "You are being dramatic. Sit down and fix this." I met her eyes. "No, you fix it." Then I did something that would cost them far more than the catering deposit. I walked straight toward the event coordinator and asked for the master invoice, because what they didn't know was that I had paid for almost all of this. And the next morning, their world didn't just crack. It collapsed. The event coordinator's smile disappeared the second she saw my face. "I need the master invoice," I said. Behind me, I could feel the room unraveling. Diane was whispering frantically to Andrew. Guests were pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. The coordinator hesitated. "Ma'am, that's usually handled by me," I said calmly. "It's in my name." That was their second mistake. They assumed Andrew's family paid for everything. They loved telling people they were hosting this wedding. What they didn't know. When Andrew's startup collapsed last year, I quietly covered the deposits. The venue, the catering, the band, the flowers, even the honeymoon suite, because I believed in partnership. I believed in us. The coordinator pulled up the contract on her tablet. I watched her eyes scan the billing section. Her expression shifted. "Oh," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. Diane must have sensed something, because she stormed over. "What is going on?" she demanded. I turned the tablet so she could see. Under primary financial responsibility, my name sat there in black and white. Patricia Walker. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Andrew stepped forward, confusion turning to dread. "Patricia, why is your name on that?" "Because," I said quietly, "when your father refused to contribute and you said you'd figure it out." "I did." His face went pale. The coordinator cleared her throat. "Per the contract, cancellation within 24 hours forfeits the deposit, but all future services can be released or reassigned at the client's discretion." "At the client's discretion." "Mine." I nodded slowly. "Please cancel everything effective immediately." Diane's composure shattered. "You ungrateful girl," she hissed. "Do you realize how humiliating this is?" I looked at her steadily. Yes, that word landed harder than anything else I'd said. Andrew stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We can fix this. Just apologize. Move your parents to another table. Don't throw everything away." "Throw everything away?" Like my parents were disposable decorations. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "I'm taking it back." I turned toward the band. "You're free to pack up." To the catering manager. "Please stop service." To the guests. "Thank you for coming. Drive safely." People began standing awkwardly, unsure whether to leave or pretend this was some elaborate performance. Diane grabbed my arm this time. "You will regret this." I gently removed her hand. "No," I said softly. "You will." And as guests started filing out, whispering, glancing, pulling out their phones, I leaned in just close enough for only her and Andrew to hear. "Check tomorrow morning's bank activity." Because there was one more thing they didn't know, and when they found out, it wouldn't just be their social reputation that collapsed. It would be their finances. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was heartbroken, but because I was done being underestimated. By 6:03 a.m., my phone started vibrating. Andrew, call after call after call. I let it ring. At 6:11 a.m., Diane called. I answered that one. "What did you do?" she shrieked. "No greeting, no pretense." I poured myself coffee before answering. "I canceled the wedding." "You froze the joint account." There it was, the real panic. Yes, I said calmly. I moved my money, silence, heavy, breathing. On the other end, Andrew and I had a joint account for future planning, a house, children, investments, what they never asked. Where most of that money came from, me, my consulting contracts, my bonuses, the inheritance from my aunt that I never touched. I had left it there because I trusted him. Trust is expensive when you give it to the wrong people. You can't just take everything. Diane snapped. I actually laughed. Everything? I repeated. I took what was mine. Andrew grabbed the phone from her. Patricia, we have payments coming out today. My car. The office lease. That sounds stressful, I said softly. He went quiet. You said you believed in partnership. He tried. I did, I answered. You believed in hierarchy. Silence again. Then the truth spilled out. You're overreacting. It was just seating. Double quotes. No. It wasn't just seating. It was a preview of holidays, of how our children would be treated, of how my parents would be slowly pushed out of every important moment. I saw my future last night, I said, and I declined it. Andrew's voice dropped lower. You're going to regret humiliating my family. I stared out the window at the sunrise hitting the rooftops. No, I said quietly. Your family humiliated themselves, and then I ended the call. Bym, my phone was flooded, texts from guests. Are you okay? Honestly, good for you. I've never seen Diane that shaken. One message stood out. It was from Andrew's father. 3 words, call me. Now, I almost ignored it. Almost, but something told me this wasn't about pride anymore. This was about money, and when I finally called him, he didn't yell, he didn't insult me, he just said one sentence that made my blood run cold. You should have read the prenuptial draft we prepared. I went very still. What draft? And that's when I realized the humiliation at the wedding wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the one I saw. You should have read the prenuptial draft we prepared. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, the sunrise suddenly feeling a lot colder. What draft? I repeated. Andrew's father exhaled slowly. Unlike Diane, he didn't scream. He calculated the agreement Andrew was going to present to you next week. After the honeymoon, my stomach dropped. Present to me? I asked carefully. Yes. It was structured to protect family assets. Family assets, I swallowed. Andrew doesn't have family assets. A pause, then, very calmly. He will. That was the third mistake. They thought I was emotional. They thought I was reactive. They had no idea I was listening. What exactly did this draft say? I asked. Another pause. It stipulated that in the event of divorce, you would not be entitled to any appreciation in value of Andrew's future ventures. Any intellectual property developed within the marriage would remain his. Any shared property purchased with joint funds would default to primary title holder, Andrew, because 3 months ago, when we toured houses, he insisted everything be cleaner if it was in his name. I said yes, because I trusted him. And who wrote this? I asked quietly. Our attorney, he said. It's standard. Double quote standard. To blindside your future wife. To let her fund the wedding. To let her fund your life, and then legally erase her. I assume Andrew knew about this. I said. Silence. That was my answer. I was going to explain it gently. His father added, gently, like Diane gently seated my parents by the kitchen. You humiliated our family publicly, he continued. You forced Andrew into a vulnerable financial position. I actually smiled. Vulnerable? I asked. You drafted a legal trap for me. His voice hardened slightly. It was protection. For who? I asked. No answer. Because we both knew. For them, not for me. I leaned against the counter, feeling something shift inside me. Not heartbreak, clarity. You said I should have read it, I said slowly. That implies it was already signed. Another pause. Longer this time. We were waiting for the right moment. My hand tightened around the phone. Waiting, meaning they intended to corner me, meaning last night wasn't just about disrespect. It was about leverage. You were going to pressure me after the wedding, I said softly. When walking away would look unreasonable, he didn't deny it. And that's when I realized something else. If they prepared a prenup without telling me, what else had they prepared? Send me the draft, I said. That won't be necessary. It will, I replied calmly. Because if you don't, my attorney will request it. Another silence, and then, finally, you've changed, Patricia. No, I said quietly. I've woken up. I ended the call, and for the first time since the wedding, I didn't feel shaken. I felt strategic, because if they thought I embarrassed them before, they hadn't seen anything yet, and what I uncovered in that prenup draft wasn't just greedy. It was illegal, and when I showed it to my lawyer, she went completely still. My attorney's name is Evelyn Carter, she's 58, sharp as glass, and not impressed by theatrics. When I slid the prenup draft across her desk, she didn't react at first. She just read, page by page, clause by clause. The silence stretched so long I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside her office window. Then she stopped and went very still. Patricia, she said carefully, did you ever verbally agree to transfer intellectual property rights to Andrew? No. Did you ever authorize the creation of a holding company in anticipation of marriage? I blinked. What holding company? She turned the page toward me. There it was, a company registered 2 months ago under Andrew's name, with a clause stating that any consulting revenue, proprietary strategies, or future contractual opportunities introduced during engagement shall be considered marital contribution to pre-existing entity. I stared at it. That's my consulting portfolio. I whispered. Andrew didn't have one. I did. High-level corporate mediation contracts, private advisory retainers, long-term strategic partnerships. He had attended to dinners with me. That was it. They were preparing to claim a portion of your existing business pipeline, Evelyn said flatly. Can they? I asked. She met my eyes. Not legally. But the language is intentionally intimidating. Intimidating, like seating my parents by the kitchen, like drafting a prenup after deposits were paid, like waiting until I was locked into a wedding to corner me. Evelyn closed the folder. This isn't just protection, she said. This is asset positioning under false pretenses. My stomach twisted. So what does that mean? It means, she said slowly, if Andrew knowingly allowed you to fund shared expenses while planning to restructure ownership in his favor, that borders on financial misrepresentation, fraud. The word hung unspoken between us. Do you want to pursue this? She asked. I thought about Andrew's shrug, about Diane's smile, about my father sitting near the kitchen doors. Yes, I said quietly. I do. Evelyn nodded once, then we moved first. Within hours, formal notice was sent requesting full disclosure of Andrew's corporate filings, communications regarding the prenup, and any entity created during your engagement. That afternoon, Andrew showed up at my condo. He looked exhausted, not heartbroken, panicked. You hired a lawyer? He demanded. You drafted a legal trap, I replied. It was just paperwork. No, I said calmly. It was strategy. He ran a hand through his hair. You're blowing this out of proportion, am I? I asked softly, because by then, I knew something he didn't. The holding company he created? It listed projected assets that didn't exist yet, including one contract that had been offered to me privately, a contract no one should have known about, except him. And when I asked Evelyn to trace the filing dates, we discovered something else. The company wasn't just created 2 months ago. It was backdated, and that changed everything. Backdated. I stared at the filing timestamp on Evelyn's screen. The holding company Andrew created designed to absorb my consulting revenue was registered 2 months ago, but the effective date listed 6 months ago, before the private contract was even offered to me, which meant one of two things. Either he had supernatural business instincts, or he knew about a deal that was supposed to be confidential. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. Patricia, who else knew about that upcoming contract? No one, I said immediately. It was discussed in a closed advisory dinner. NDA signed at the door. Andrew had come with me that night. He didn't speak much. He mostly smiled, observed, listened. My pulse began to slow, not from fear, but from focus. If he filed a company anticipating revenue from a deal that wasn't public, Evelyn continued, that suggests intent, not protection, not paperwork, intent. Within 48 hours, Evelyn's team requested metadata from the Secretary of State's office, and there it was, the digital trail. The document had been uploaded recently, then manually altered to reflect an earlier effective date. Amateur move, sloppy, desperate. That afternoon, Andrew's father called again. His voice was no longer calm. You need to withdraw your counsel immediately, he said. Why? I asked. You're creating legal exposure. For who? I asked softly. He didn't answer, because he knew. By then, Andrew's car lease payment had bounced, his office landlord had called twice, and the so-called investors he bragged about, they were starting to ask questions. I hadn't exposed anything publicly yet, but word travels fast in certain circles, and once attorneys start requesting documents, people notice. That evening, Andrew showed up again. This time, he wasn't angry, he was scared. Patricia, he said, stepping inside without waiting to be invited, we can fix this. I'll void the company. I'll destroy the draft. I'll apologize to your parents, apologize, like it was a patch for a crack that ran through the foundation. You didn't just humiliate my parents, I said quietly. You planned to erase me. His jaw tightened. That's not fair, neither was last night. He looked at me then, not with love, with calculation, and that's when he said it. You think you can win this? My family has resources, that word again, hierarchy, power, leverage. I stepped closer. So do I said calmly, because what Andrew didn't know yet, what Diane didn't know, what his father was just beginning to realize, was that one of the important guests at the wedding had recorded everything, including Diane's comment, including Andrew's shrug, and including my cancellation, and that guest wasn't just anyone. He was a senior partner at the firm currently auditing Andrew's father's largest client, and the morning that video landed in the right inbox, the damage wouldn't be social. It would be financial, and this time, they wouldn't be able to see the consequences near the kitchen.